Egypt, land of two great cultures, the old and the new. It is also the Islamic center of the Islamic culture as well, but we look to the past, for we see greatness in the pyramids and what they've done. Then we look to the modern, which is Cairo, which is the capital of Egypt, and they've moved the capital to a much better and larger city. The building project was as much today as the pyramids were way back then. So this new city is 40 kilometers away, and this is a snapshot of the past of the ancient glory of Egypt and what they've done as we move on to the new city by 2022. And you see how expansive and beautiful this will become. Amazing. They usually 98% of the people live only on 4% of the soil. The reason for that is because of water, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. I just wanted to introduce you to probably one of the wondrous countries of the world, Egypt. Wow, what a place. Maybe we can go there one day. Egypt's prominence has always been centered around water, and we have two pieces of it. Remember, the Nile flows upward, it flows north, and so the Nile originates way down in Victoria Falls, down there in Kenya, and also the White Nile and the Blue Nile, and the Blue Nile originates down around, if you can see it. Oh, I should enlarge that, shouldn't I? Well, yeah, let me do that because this is so cool. Let me enlarge it. See the origins. Okay, so the Upper Nile, again, goes way down here, and it really goes off the map, originating the White Nile and the Blue Nile down here in Ethiopia and further south. So, and this is ancient stuff. I mean, they've had like cities going back thousands of years following the Nile, all the way up through Sudan. And again, Sudan, there's not much there except desert and the Nile, and everybody lives along the Nile, obviously, for irrigation purposes. They built a dam up here, the Aswan High Dam, and that you can also tell. Here's a cool thing for you geography minded. How can you tell the river flows north? Because the dam blocks the water flowing north. You can see it beginning a lake here, a giant lake made from the Nile River, and then it kind of just filters out going north through Thebes, which is an ancient city, 4,000 years old, and it goes all the way up through Middle Egypt into Cairo, which sits at the headwaters of the Nile, and you see the Suez Canal not that far away. Remember, that was called a choking point, where there's just not a little water and land close together with a little water going through. That's the canal. Very important. No one messes with the Suez Canal. That's a big no-no. It's always been safe. Egypt looks after it. We look after it. Israel looks after it. And then it goes into the Mediterranean, and there's Alexandria. Remember there was a library at Alexandria that the Romans sacked and burned 1,800 years ago, somewhere around there. So anyway, it was the biggest library in the world. And actually, I'm digressing history, but that kind of brought the Middle Ages when the library at Alexandria was destroyed. Europe and the Mideast, everybody went dark because that was the center of knowledge, and so that's too bad. Anyway, that's a little history. So we kind of see, of course, the Red Sea over here. So Egypt always has held a power in the world, in that part of the country, from the pharaohs up to its modern military. It's also called the Egyptian model, if you want to think politically about it. It's more of a secular. It does call itself an Islamic republic, but it's more secular with the military ruling. And we fund that military for obvious reasons, to kind of keep it from going to a Islamic state. So we sink a lot of money into Egypt. And it has, of course, PowerPoint, 6 subregions. You see them there, lower, middle, upper, but they're defined by the river. So all your subregions are defined by that, by the Nile River. Nile River is just a fascinating river full of crocodiles and beauty, and you don't go swimming in it because you'll be eaten. So we go on from there, and we'll go to the next thing. We might talk about the Sudan for a minute. To the north, Sudan is majority Muslim. To the south, Sudan is Christian and African religion, African animist and Christian mixed. So what has happened is they've had a civil war. They're fighting back and forth, and oil was discovered in South Sudan. So that was a game changer for the people that wanted to separate from Sudan itself, but they still have a pipeline going through, and it's still it's an area in transition. So and it's also sitting in the African transition zone, which is really a zone of countries just south of the bottom of the Sahara Desert. So anyway, Sudan is a place I would not want to go. It's just not. Anyway, let's continue. Now we approach what is called the Middle East. And that's kind of a misnomer. It's not exactly the Middle East, but the term is stuck, so everybody uses it. And let's talk about Iraq first. Obviously, we've had a war there. We've been back twice. I want to read a little something from on page 221. I'd like you to look at that about Iraq's enduring importance. And in this, pay attention to this. Iraq is divided into 3 cultural domains in which religion, ethnicity, and tradition form the basis of its political geography. The largest population sector is composed of about 24 million Shiites, 70% of the national total of 33.4 million in the southeast, whose religious affinities are with neighboring Iran. In other words, Iran is mainly Shiite. Remember, Shiites believe that only those that descended from the Prophet Muhammad should rule, and so it kind of bleeds over into Iraq. And the next largest is the Sunnis. Remember this? Sunnis believe that anybody that is devoutly Muslim should be able to rule. And Saudi Arabia is big on the Sunnis. And there's a big war, or kind of a cold war, between Iran, the Shiite majority, and Saudi Arabia, the Sunni majority, the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, let me continue. So the next largest is the Sunni minority of about 8 million, 24% in the north and west. Perhaps the most striking feature on this map is the striped zone that blankets northeastern Iraq, large parts of Turkey and Iran, and a few pockets of northern Syria. In this territory, the majority of the inhabitants are not Arabs, but Kurds. So let's talk about Kurds. Kurds are the world's biggest nationless minority. Kurds helped us fight against ISIS. They want their own country. And Kurds are really a pain for Turkey, for Syria, for Iraq, for Iran. They all exist in this transition zone. And they have their own laws and their own culture. And they don't fit in with the Persians or the Arabs or the Turks. So no country likes the Kurds. They're just we kind of turned our back on them back about last year when we pulled out of Syria, when Kurds were fighting ISIS, and we were helping them fight ISIS. And in Syria, in Aleppo, there we are, we ran away because Washington made a very big blunder. They turned their back on our allies, and we'll never get that friendship back. Kurds were our friends. Now they're looking to Syria and Assad and Russia to kind of be their protector. But that was the biggest blunder of foreign policy I've ever seen. One of the biggest blunders of foreign policy I've ever seen in any administration was turning our back on the Kurds. So we go back to Iraq. We've been there twice. We've had many veterans come back. So it was a tough war. My best friend led the Marine Corps Expeditionary Force into Iraq the first time we went in. And he's a retired Marine, and he said it's just he won't even talk about it. It's just a mess. So let's talk about the politics of Israel and the Palestinians. And Jordan we'll mention that as well. Just a second. Now, earlier I mentioned the Kurds were nationless people. Now, the Palestinians are pretty much a nationless people. After World War II, the nation of Israel in 1948 was created for a homeland for the Jewish people, and it was based on in Palestine. There's been Palestinians there for thousands of years, so it's kind of a never-ending conflict. They had a neighboring Arab states had a war in 1949, and Israel held its own and won more territory, so it increased its territory. And in 1967, and I remember this as a 14-year-old kid in the summertime, I heard Israel and Egypt was at war, along with various other Arab nations. And of course, Israel won, but it even gained more territory. The Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank from Jordan, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. And again, there was outflow of Palestinian refugees. So it's quite a gain for Israel. And the conflict of Palestine, I think, will probably never be resolved in our lifetime. It's just one of those things that's going to keep going and going, tit for tat. And I might pause and start a new. I'm going to start a new one. So I'm going to stop right here.